So, welcome, Susannah, to the Driven Female Entrepreneur Podcast. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, Anita.
I'm super excited because I know, as well as talking about your business journey, you are actually a shoe consultant. So we actually get the opportunity to talk all things shoes as well, which
Definitely.
I'm here in my UGG slippers at the moment, working from home. But usually I love all things shoes and heels. So we will get into that in a little bit. But first, I'd love it if you could share with us your business journey. How did you get to become a shoe consultant and start your own business?
Okay, well, I will say that I have only ever worked in shoes, except a brief paper round. Actually, no, that was too long. And a couple of other shop jobs. But since I was 16, I started working in the shoe business, I would say. So working in shoe shops. And then I studied for a degree in footwear design. Then I went into buying and design at a UK retailer, big UK retailer who just sold shoes. And then I worked in product management for a global footwear brand and ended up being their global product manager for women's footwear. So I had a lot of experience in shoes, but I've always wanted to work for myself. And that, I suppose, became more and more realistic in my mind the more my career progressed and the more my confidence increased. And so when I was working for the big brand, the big global brand, I was finding that something was a bit missing from my life. There were good times and more difficult times in that company, and I got to travel a lot, which was amazing. But I felt as though I wasn't directly helping people in any way. And I had all this information, all of this experience and knowledge of shoes. And I just felt like I was in charge of the shoes that were being put out into the world, but I didn't really see the impact that they made on people. So it was just sort of a very closed world. So I started volunteering for a charity, women's charity, at the weekends, and called SmartWorks, and based in London. And I was helping women. The charity helps women to prepare for a job interview. So they have a job interview lined up, but they don't have the appropriate outfit. They just don't have the clothes to wear. And so that would normally be a barrier. So the charity SmartWorks helps them by giving them interview coaching and styling them in an outfit that makes them feel really confident to go into the interview and get the job. So I got so much out of this, and I just felt like, there was something missing in my day job, and that maybe that was it. It was something where I felt as though I was helping people a bit more. So I kind of I got to the point within that company where I had what I can only really call a vague idea of the business that I wanted to launch. This is not standard best practice for launching a business, but what I did have was I had saved up quite a bit of money. I had been very, very frugal for a long time, and really just been cutting corners on my finances as much as possible so I could save a lot of money. And so I knew that I could survive for a year. So I could figure out exactly what my business was going to be. I knew it was going to be about shoes, and I knew it was going to use my knowledge and experience, and that I wanted to help people, but I didn't exactly know how. But I did have a name for the business because I'd been a bit sort of frustrated creatively, and I'd been blogging under the pseudonym The Shoe Consultant for probably a couple of years before I actually set up the business. And I kind of thought that blog could be monetized, but it never really worked out like that. So I had the business name, which actually in some ways sort of prompted what the business became. So the Shoe Consultant actually initially started, and I was going to help shoe brands, and I was also going to help women, because I was really passionate about helping women to find better shoes, because I think actually a lot of the shoes available to buy are not as good as we deserve, frankly. Not as comfortable, not as interesting, beautiful, good quality as we deserve. And I think some brands are really charging a lot of money for something which, yeah, isn't really the best that they could offer us. So I actually started doing a bit of kind of VIP shoe shopping, like personal shopping, but just for shoes, and helping people to start shoe brands at the same time. And actually, really, eventually, I realized that the business was on the business to business side, that people didn't particularly need help with shopping for shoes, or they didn't know that they wanted it. They weren't looking for somebody to help them to find good shoes. So yeah, that's sort of the birth story of the business.
That's great. And I love that you just had a vague idea but decided to jump in anyway. And there's that image, isn't there, of like, to be a good entrepreneur, you have to be prepared to jump off a cliff and build the aeroplane on the way down. And it's kind of that's exactly what you did, was jump in. And but it sounds to me like you were confident in your skill set. You just weren't quite sure where that would take you yet. Is that accurate, do you think?
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. Yes. But, I had so much that I wanted to share with the world. It was just figuring out that platform, or various platforms from which to share it. Yeah.
And I think there's no right or wrong way to start a business. On this podcast, we've heard of people who had the whole clear idea before they started, everything was mapped out, and then they took the leap, or those who were kind of pushed from their clients or pushed through a life situation, losing a job or having a family and needing to figure something else out quickly. Mm-hmm. And then those who just have a kind of vague dream like yourself, and then go for it. But in every single situation, we hear that where you start is never where you end up. So it's kind of almost just start anywhere. Start anywhere.
Exactly.
Start learning the skills, start learning what it takes, start learning what you enjoy, what you started with the VIP shopping and realize, well, that's not really the thing, but the B2B side is more where you can have more impact and you enjoy that process. So what was it like? What did the reality of having your own business feel like, or versus what you thought it would be like in the first place? If you had any idea.
Okay, yeah. So I guess I had this idea of freedom, right? So it was being my own boss, being on my own schedule, and really being able to do things that I thought were valuable. I guess though, the opposite of those things are often the frustrations that I think people do feel when they're working for someone else. Yeah. So, okay, so that was what I thought. And definitely people, when I said, I was going to set up on my own and I'd be working from home, I got the question of, won't you be lonely? And to me, that is a silly question, because I don't know. I don't really get lonely in a work sense. I really enjoy the space. I also enjoy interactions with other human beings, for sure. You've got to have that throughout your day. But there's something about the silence that is really useful. When you are working on your own, which at first I was. But okay, so the reality of having my own business, it really actually was what I thought it would be. And so definitely freedom and autonomy. I guess the things that you maybe don't exactly picture are, because you have the freedom, because you have all of the autonomy, it's your decisions that make or break the business. So actually there's a lot of pressure. It's exactly how you structure your day is exactly how productive you will be. And there is no one setting an agenda apart from you, really. You can refuse invitations if you want to. It's however you feel it should be. So that in some ways there's pressure, but of course it's sort of pressure from yourself as well as from a financial point of view.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because I think it's so true, isn't it? You have this freedom, but I also kind of think it's a bit of a freedom trap, because you're like, I can do whatever I want to do, and then you're like, oh, I can do whatever I want to do, and you realize that it's up to you to really consciously create and actively manage your time, your schedule, what you're going to do, how you're going to connect with people. And as you say, if your business does well, then that's hats off to you. You've made that happen. But if it doesn't do well, that's also your fault. We're in control, and we can try and blame the economy and COVID and all these different things, but it's really, we are in full control. We can make changes, make decisions, and that's kind of exciting and terrifying in equal measure. But I think it just takes a bit of time to get used to that, because it's what's so different to working for yourself to being within a company where you're told, these are your values, this is the work you do, this is how you do it. There's not so much you can bring. I mean, you can be an entrepreneur, and if you have a great company and a great boss, you can definitely pave the way, but it's still within a framework. Whereas on your own, you just really, it's like anything goes. But I think once you are clear with that and you're okay with that principle, then it's as long as you can stay on that kind of growth mindset and the idea that if things don't go according to plan, it's all just information that's going to help you build the business the way you want it to, exactly. And to keep going with that. So how did you manage that? So you were out there, you could do whatever you wanted, and you had this freedom. How did you go about managing your time and making things happen?
Well, it was very useful in the first couple of years of my business, because basically I handed in my notice the first working day after the Christmas break. I think a lot of decisions are made in that period. And then I had 3 months notice to work. Luckily, they managed to find someone to replace me sort of partway through that. And so part of what prompted me to leave my corporate job at that point was that my husband and I were trying for a baby and we weren't getting anywhere. So handed in my notice, and obviously, it's hard to figure out the exact date of conception, but it basically tied in with my, my proper leave date after my notice period. So I think maybe it was like a week after that. So I'd gone, and promptly became pregnant. So of course I was exhausted. I wasn't very well at the beginning, as a lot of women face. And so I needed a lot of time to eat. People don't tell you how long, all the eating that you do when you're pregnant takes. Time to eat and time to nap. So it was an interesting, certainly the first 9 months, and of course then having a newborn. So it served me well, because I was able to just do things as and when I felt I could, and I was quite motivated. I was on a bit of a high from having, this was the start of something very exciting and very new. Yeah. So I had that. I wasn't, completely slacking. And I went on lots of courses. I got involved with Enterprise Nation in the UK, who do loads of really good stuff for startups. And so I educated myself. I got my first 2 or 3 clients probably in that first period of 9 months. And I did a few paid speaking things about shoes, and it was a learning time. It was a sort of developing my website, developing how I came across to the world, and then this is a long story, isn't it? So how I manage things when I got a bit more time to focus on the business. So, you know, I always kept it going, even when I had a baby and I was he was on one arm and my laptop was being typed at with the other hand, that sort of thing, you know, as and when I could. But when he started going to nursery when he was 1, so really the business was almost 2 years old by that point, that was when I was able to dedicate a bit more time to it. And at some point during that year, I started working with a business coach. And I've worked with 2 different female business coaches, and they have been brilliant. And definitely putting the structure and, you know, figuring out the purpose side of things helps you to be motivated, but really the structure of how your week looks, and that you're in control. But if you let it, your inbox will be your entire week.
Yes.
It will control you. So that's still a challenge for me, but the way I schedule my week, the way I structure it, is a lot better, serves me a lot better now. And I could not have done that without the help of business coaches.
That's great. And as a business coach myself, I love that you brought that up. And I think, you know, if I look back to my first business, and I can definitely see how a business coach could have helped me, but I didn't know that they even existed. And I think if I was even vaguely aware, I wouldn't have thought that they would have been right for me. I would have thought, oh, it's just for established businesses. So it's great that you reached out and you got that help, because getting, as you say, getting that structure, that little bit of hindsight, encouragement, the accountability and follow through, and just having someone in your corner helps you just make so much more progress and enjoy the process, and not make so many wrong turns as you might do on your own. Because there's a certain amount to be said for figuring things out on your own, and even if you do have a coach, there will still be things you need to figure out. But if you don't have to completely exhaust yourself with that process, then I think it's very useful. And learning to manage your time your way is perfect. And I love that, you know, that you had your baby, but you also took that as an opportunity to just take it at your pace and not put yourself under pressure to, oh, I have a business, so I have to do all of these things. And you took the time to build a business and be the mom, and to keep that balance and do things that felt right for you, which is really so important when you're building a business, is to as Stephen Covey says, start with the end in mind. And I always think part of the end in mind is having your own business that feels like your own, that serves your lifestyle and not the other way around. And you can start doing that from day one. You don't have to wait until you have so many clients before you start giving yourself that freedom and balance. You can really manage that from day one and build that discipline in, which I think works brilliantly. And it's so right we say about your inbox. I always tell my clients, you know, you have to remember your inbox is everybody else's schedule for you. It's not your priorities. So you have to manage it in a way that fits your schedule, get your priorities done first, and then go back in and see what everyone else wants you to do. But focus on your own work first. Otherwise you'll get nothing done. Nothing done.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, your energy disappears. You know, I think it's something about emails that can be a little bit draining if you let them, but actually you can manage that by, as you say, doing your own things first, and then actually you're on a bit of a high because you've ticked something really juicy off your to-do list, and then in some ways you can be better at replying to emails because you're not seeing them as a chore. You're seeing them as, oh, I get to do this now. And it feels better.
Yeah. And you've been focused on your goals. So then you're probably more likely to say yes and no to the right things as well, not just feel a duty to agree to everything everyone else wants you to do. Instead, you're like, well, this is what I do. This is where I have an impact. This is where I use my talents and skills to their best ability. So no, I'm not going to do all these rubbish things that you're asking me to do. But yes, I'll do these things which really align with where you're going.
Exactly.
So we have to, of course, talk about shoes. You mentioned that there are a lot of shoes out there that perhaps don't, that we don't deserve, that aren't right for us. But how do you go about that process? I know I've got funny shaped feet. They're very narrow. I have my second toe is longer than my first, and my heel doesn't stick out enough. So finding shoes that stay on my feet and feel comfortable is just a nightmare. Are there any secret magic tricks to finding the right shoes?
Okay, so one thing I would say is that there are a lot of shoes out there which are not foot shaped. You know, as much as we all think our feet must be weird, actually, there are some shoes which are just not right. They would fit almost nobody comfortably. And yet we we persist and we buy the wrong things, and then they sit in our wardrobes gathering dust and making us feel sad because, but you're so beautiful, why can't I wear you? So one thing is definitely to look for shoes which are foot shaped, and that sounds really obvious, but I think particularly with high heels, one thing I've noticed about certain it's not even certain brands, it's so many brands do this, where they have a high heel. I've got a prop. It's not a shoe, but it's kind of a shoe. So I'm going to describe this because I know this is a podcast as well. So really, a lot of shoes have basically a straight line between where the bottom of your heel sits, we're talking about high heels here, and where the ball of your foot is. So if the actual shoe, like underneath where your foot would sit, is just a straight line, well, that's not the shape of a shoe. If it's got a curve, sort of is much more curvaceous underneath, then that reflects your foot, because you know our bodies are a series of curves. We have very few actual straight lines in them, and so if shoes just have a straight line underneath your foot connecting the heel and underneath the ball of your foot, it's going to be miles away from your foot. It's going to provide no support. So the point of why you need that curve is because it's going to touch more areas of your foot and therefore spread your weight and just generally feel more comfortable. It's going to help you avoid that burn on the balls of your feet. Gosh, can we even remember that at this point?
So badly. I would never have thought of just picking up the shoe and seeing if it's flat between the ball and the heel or if it's got a curve. I mean, that's such an obvious thing to look for now you say it, but I did in my 40 something years, I've never done that. And I'm sure I'm going to go through all my shoes now and say, okay, I can get rid of these ones now and give myself space. My husband would be so happy.
Good. Say goodbye to anything that you didn't wear last year, if you can remember. This year's been different.
Yeah, this year it's just slippers. I'll just have slippers left.
Exactly. It's a good time to start a slipper brand.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So, and I loved what you said earlier, going right back to when you worked with the charity, and this is something that I've seen myself. I know when I turned 40, I treated myself to having a stylist for the day, because I'd worked in offices and I'd worked in private banking, so I was always being very smart, very glamorous, and shoes were a big part of that, and I loved my shoes. But then I became a mum and I was working from home and I didn't have need for that wardrobe anymore, and I really struggled to get my style back. And shoes were, I say, I always thought I had weird feet, but no, perhaps I don't. I just have just weird shoes that I've drawn to. But you know, she was really saying how important the shoe is to finish off an outfit. And as soon as she helped me pick out just a couple of simple styles that would go with anything as a start point, it was amazing how different I felt. And I would walk out and people were like, wow, you look so different. And it was like, it was just my shoes.
Yeah.
Is there any advice you have about how to find shoes that give you that confidence? Because as you're starting out in business or showing up in business, you really want to show up as your best self. and have that confidence in your business and your pitch, the last thing you want to be worried about is anything to do with your clothing or your shoe, like pinching shoes or anything like that. So is there any tips on how to find the right shoe for your outfit and that give you that sense of confidence?
I guess one thing I would say is don't feel you have to wear heels. So I think some women, just have never been particularly comfortable in heels, but feel that they have to wear them to be smart. And you really don't. There are some great loafers out there, really lovely, smart Chelsea boots or kind of ballet pumps that can look just as smart. And, I think we need to get this out of our heads as like, you can only look smart if you're wearing high heels. And but if you want a heel and if you feel that you gain some confidence from wearing heels, and I think a lot of us do, then block heels are great. Boots are easier in terms of fit, and they don't really have as many places to rub on your feet, so they can be good. A nice kind of sleek zip up boot in a nice soft leather can be really nice. So it doesn't have to be a court shoe or pump, as they call it in the US, because they're really hard to fit. Actually, just take any court shoe in a shop and it will fit not that many people very well without kind of slipping at the back, and that's if the heel height is comfortable for you. So be discerning, but do it your way. Don't feel that it has to be that very corporate look. And it's nice, especially when you have your own business, it is nice to sort of figure out what is your style in some ways. What is your brand, your personal brand? What does it look like now? I think that's actually quite exciting, and figure out your signature shoes. And don't be afraid of color in shoes. That can boost your mood for sure, and exude an air of confidence. People look at somebody wearing a colorful shoe, even a block color, bright pink, something like that, and they think, okay, I don't know what it is. It's it's people acknowledge that it's not sort of just bravery. It's they know who they are, I think.
Yeah. My favorite shoes are like bright red. I got some bright red heels, and I had some shocking pink heels that I borrowed from a friend to go with a grey dress that had a little splash of pink in it, and they went so well. And I was really sad to give the shoes back because this is so. I would never have chosen them for myself, but having borrowed them and seen them and just seeing how I felt wearing them as well. Sometimes you think, particularly being an introvert, sometimes I think, having a bright color, it's just too bold for me. But then when you actually step into it, you realize, oh no, maybe it's not. I quite like being bold. So experimenting a little bit, and as I say, matching that up to your brand and how the impression you want to create and leave people with as well, because that's what your brand, isn't it, is what impression you leave people with, rather than just having that first impression. Go for it, have fun.
And also, having a statement shoe is a really useful tool for an introvert when you're in places where people can see your shoes. For example, networking can be quite challenging for an introvert, and basically you've just given someone an opening. If you have a statement garment, whatever that is, then someone is going to come up to you and say, I love your ... I love your shoes. And then you didn't have to do it. You didn't have to take that scary step of having to go up to somebody and say hi because they've already opened the conversation. So shoes are powerful.
Yeah, exactly. They can be a statement and an opening networking tool too. I love that. Susannah, you've shared so much great information, and I've loved having the opportunity to talk shoes on the show. I never thought I'd do that. Before we wrap up, I'd love it if you could, if there's any maybe standout tips that or lessons you've learned the hard way that you would like to share with other women as they're on their business journey, that could perhaps help them shortcut the process a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So definitely trust your gut. You know, it's great to run things by people, and business coaches in particular are very helpful. But I would say, yeah, the mistakes that I feel I have made, that I would prefer not to have done, are things where I didn't trust my gut. Now, whether that's, you know, a particular partnership that didn't really work out, but actually I knew at the start that it wasn't really right, and I did it anyway, or whether it's you know, a part of your business, a service you're offering that actually isn't working. You kind of you've got to listen to the for sure what your customers want, what they want, what they don't want, but also, yeah, trust your gut, because you know, really it's your knowledge and experience that is sending those messages really to you, and if you don't listen to them, then you're not really doing yourself any favors. So yeah, I think that takes a while to hone, actually, when you have your own business. The what should I listen to and what shouldn't I listen to, and which sort of external influences and which internal influences. But you're usually right, I would say.
Yeah, I love that tip. And I think, you know, our body knows before our mind does very often, like what's right and what's wrong. And I remember doing a session a few years ago, and this lady was saying, you know, ask your body a question, close your eyes, and if you fall forward, it's the right thing to do. If you fall backwards, it isn't. And I was like, can that be true? But I started testing it out, and you know, 9 times out of 10, if I fell forward, it was really something that was the right decision. And where I felt my body repelling from something, it was something that I wasn't feeling right about. And but I think I see a lot of people second guessing themselves. As you say, it can take a bit of time to build that trust and in yourself, that you and I love that you equated that gut feeling to, it's actually your knowledge and experience talking here.
Yeah.
It's that instinct taking over, because you have that locked into your body and into your brain, but we don't, when our brains are thinking, it's a bit slower, so our brains take slower to process this kind of information. Than, you know, it's always that emotional instinct that kicks in first, and sometimes we don't always trust that. But yeah, I think knowing that it isn't just gut instinct, it's hard earned experience, that's propelling that. I think that will help more people to have that courage to listen into what they're really feeling.
Good. I hope so. Yeah.
Great. So thank you so much for everything you shared. For anybody who's listening to the podcast while out shoe shopping or browsing online, I'll put your links and everything in the show notes underneath. But how can people find you if they don't have access to that right now? Is it still the shoeconsultant.com?
So it's just shoeconsultant.com, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at shoeconsultant. And really the bulk of what I do is I help people to start shoe brands. So anyone out there who is thinking of starting a shoe brand, I would love to help you. I have a lot of experience. Really, that has been the bulk of my business for 5.5 years now. So I've learned a lot, and I've helped a lot of people along the way. So actually, can I share an offer, Melita?
Yes, of course.
So I have an online course that I created over the period of about a year, and it's rich with video content. It's basically a workbook from concept of you want to start a shoe brand to launch and beyond. So, and I wanted to share an offer. I wanted to give your listeners 10% off. So if you go to shoeconsultant.com, the course is really visible. It's a Start a Shoe Brand course. And the 10% off code is just Driven Shoes, all one word. So
thank you so much. And to anyone, if they do start a new shoe brand, come to the Driven Female Entrepreneur Club community on Facebook and tell us all about it, because we would love to have beautiful shoes that feel comfortable. And Susannah's going to help you create exactly that. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much again for your time and sharing so much great information and helping us find the right shoes too.
Thank you so much. It's been so good talking to you.
You're welcome. So bye.